Good morning, everyone. My name is State Representative Jason Bartlett, and I represent Bethel, Danbury, and Reading, District 2. And I appreciate your attendance this evening. We're competing against the pandemic upstairs known as the swine flu, so we'll make the best of it, and we'll continue to spread the word today and beyond. Today I'd like to thank the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus for endorsing 6569 and putting their full weight behind this bill, as well as the Latino and Puerto Rican Affairs Commission, Voices of Children, the State NAACP, the Commission on Children, the Connecticut Juvenile Alliance, and the Connecticut Council of Family Service Agencies. Bill 6569 deals with making compulsory the age of 18 of which a child must attend high school. This is an idea whose time has come, in my opinion. It was first started by Representative Green in the 1990s, about 1995. He first raised this idea in this bill, and it was a 5-6 year fight that Representative Green and Representative Mary Mashinsky undertook way back when, until they were able to get the legislature to put in, at the time a child could drop out at 16, and they were able to put in with parents' consent at 16 and at 17 years old. And since then, the idea was, even then, to continue to move it until we got to 18. But they ran against so many obstacles, and I think time passed and the issue was not revisited. Well, today, as we look across the state of Connecticut, and we see that we have an achievement gap, and we look at the facts and the figures, I think that it needs to be revisited, and it has been revisited. We had a public hearing on this bill earlier in the year. Nobody came and testified against it. We were not able to get a vote in committee. And so what happened was that I decided that this was something that I was willing to fight for, and I decided to petition the bill out of committee. This would be the first time on the Democratic side that was done since 1993. It required 76 signatures. It was Easter week. We got 78 signatures and filed our petition with the House Clerk, and the bill lives. And the bill was sent to education. It was not voted on in education, but it is considered right now House Calendar 1, and it will be hitting, it's getting a file number, and I believe it should be hitting the House calendar, so it is technically on the go list. Since that time, we've been able to uncover a number of facts, and we've also talked to the Office of Fiscal Analysis about any potential cost to the bill. And a number of interesting things have come forward. First of all, if you look at the 2000 OFA report, which says what a bill would cost, it says that there would be a potentially significant impact to the state of Connecticut to allow children not to quit school. And I have a real problem with the way that that's written, because what it suggests to me is that the state of Connecticut, as a matter of public policy, counts on attrition in our public high schools. They count on folks dropping out of school in Hartford, in Waterbury, and in Bethel, Connecticut, where I live. They count on children dropping out of school, because in order to do the reverse, to say that a child should stay in school from the 9th grade to the 12th grade, well, that somehow costs the state of Connecticut money. Now, I was brought up to think, and I don't know about you folks, but I was brought up to think that every child was guaranteed an education under our federal constitution and under our state constitution. And if you believe that as a principle, then you cannot write a report, nor can you stand by a report as a public policy person who cares about education in the state of Connecticut and say that it costs money to educate a child from year to year. So we want to expose that argument as specious, and we want to take it head on and to do something about it this year. Now the second part to this bill is the other, what I call the dirty secret in education in the state of Connecticut. Since the early 2002, there's been a national movement across the country to get a grip on graduation rates and dropout rates, and to get uniformity in this area. And what has happened is a number of states have used longitudinal data, which we are now trying to get implemented in the state of Connecticut, and trying to get uniformity in our graduation and dropout rates. And that's the second piece, the most important piece to this bill. Because right now, the dirty secret in the state of Connecticut is that if you are in high school and you go into adult education, it is as if you never entered the school ever. You disappear. There is no statistic for you. If you are in our high schools, they count you October 1st, and the school receives all of that ECS money for the year. And if you drop out October 2nd, or if you go into adult education in October, or November, or December, or January, you never went to school there. Now, the schools have the money for you to be there, but when they have to report their graduation rates and they have to report their dropout rates, you never existed. And that, my friends, is what I call a dirty secret. And that's what this bill addresses. This bill demands, upon passage, that the State Department of Education come up with a uniform formula for the entire state for graduation and dropout rates. And what it says is that you must account for every child. So if they go into adult education, we will track you. And if you drop out of adult education, which is actually 50% of the folks that go into adult education, then you are a dropout. So those are the guts of the bill. I want to make a couple of points about the fiscal analysis piece, because that is the piece that prevented this, in my opinion, from getting a vote in education. I met with OFA, and I've said to them that I don't agree with their approach. And more importantly, I've said that there are cost benefits to getting a high school diploma. And we've done some research, and we have found that 46% of the people that are receiving TANF, otherwise known as welfare in the state of Connecticut, do not have a high school diploma. So there is a correlation between state assistance, public assistance, food stamps, housing assistance, welfare, and having a degree, a high school diploma. And if we look at the other piece, such as incarceration, we know nationally that 67% of the folks that are incarcerated in our country do not have a high school diploma. As of yesterday, our statistics tell us that 40% out of the 19,000 incarcerated inmates, 40% do not have a high school diploma. And we can go back the last 5 years, and I can't give you, gets a little tricky to know exactly what that percentage should be. But if we go back the last 5 years, last year we gave out 897 GEDs through the Department of Corrections. And going back each year, we give out between 650 and 900 GEDs within our incarcerated population. Folks, there is a correlation between getting a high school diploma and going to jail. So what is the cost-benefit analysis for the state of Connecticut? Welfare next year will cost, under this TANF program, $117 million. And incarceration is in the same ballpark, $100 and something million for the state of Connecticut. So you tell me, should we give kids a second chance, have alternative high schools, give kids a second chance and talk to them? We have two people here today that are willing to share their story, and I appreciate their attendance. Just to put a personal story behind this, so it's not just a bunch of bureaucrats talking numbers. These are people's lives. I'd like now for the students to come forward, and I'd like Chan Albert to come and to speak to this issue. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Chan Albert. I'm 26 years old and I am a high school dropout. There were a few things that happened in my life which led to my dropping out. The first being raised in a single parent home, which was more often than not, it was unstable. It led to unhealthy behavior that led to early pregnancy. And so I had to transfer schools and I had to bring my daughter along with me. When she turned 18 months old, I was no longer eligible for the alternative school program, so I didn't see any other option other than leaving school, which I did at the age of 16. However, I am now pursuing my GED. I left school in about 2000, so it's taken me 9 years to come to this point. I was faced with the realization in watching my children go and them grow in school that they were going to graduate before I did, and it moved me to want to fight for a change. I am now, I have trouble, in providing just the basic needs that my children deserve. As children, they should not be accountable for me. You know what I'm saying? The jobs that I am able to obtain not having a high school diploma more often than not are through a temporary agency. It's nothing that will ever be adequate enough to support myself or my household. And I support this bill because I feel like if parents were held more accountable or there were alternatives presented to children, that the dropout rate wouldn't be so high. I didn't see any other way but to leave school. And if I were held more responsible or other parents, I believe that they would be more involved in their children's education and they would care more. Thank you.
Thank you, Chan. Thank you for your courage in coming forward. Appreciate it. Now, like Addie Nunez-Ortiz. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adelita Nunez-Ortiz. I am currently married, so I'm having trouble keeping my additional last name. I'm here to talk on the bill of 6569. At the age of 16, I had either one or two choices. Go back and complete the 10th grade all over again, or get my GED. And that came from my counselor in high school in New York City. When I entered the high school, I entered 9th grade. I loved it. It was great. When I went into 10th grade, I had the option to work and go to school at the same time. I thought that was a great idea, coming from a single grandmother family with no parents and no siblings. I felt that I could support myself and help my grandmother at the same time with some financial needs. At the end of that term, and I thought I was getting the credits that I needed, my counselor told me at the beginning of my 11th grade that I was not eligible to go into the 11th grade because I had failed to complete credits. That made me feel like I did all this work for nothing. The other choice was to get my GED. I dropped out of school, I tried to get my GED, but the freedom and the misguidance of not having someone or an alternative way of getting my high school diploma was not even in my future. It was not even in my grasp. So no one around me could advise me what to do. I later left New York City, came to New Haven, and I attended Wilbur Cross. That gave me an opportunity to start all over again. I transferred whatever credits I had obtained in New York City, and it gave me a new lease on high school. I loved it. I had a great time there. My favorite subject was U.S. history, and the teacher that was teaching me then is still teaching there now, and my children have also attended and attend Wilbur Cross at this time. However, being somewhere else with no family to support you, I also was faced again with the financial need of going and getting a job. So I got a part-time job, and I lost track of time, and I felt that the job and the money and the freedom was more important than taking on my high school diploma. I said I would get it later, and I'll get it later, and I'll get it later. Later was 10 years plus down the line, 2 children, and no high school diploma. Taking my kids to Head Start and kindergarten made me realize, oh my God, how am I going to tell my children school's important? I don't even have a high school diploma. Sorry. I enrolled in adult education in New Haven, and I continued to go for 4 or 5 months with some wonderful and excellent teachers there. Classes were small, and everyone was on the same level as me. I was a high school dropout. At the end of my exam was 2 Saturdays in a row, and I was so nervous and just said I'll take it and do it and see what happens, and Lord be with me. The teachers at the end of the day said, if you receive an envelope this small, it means that you did not pass the high school diploma. If you receive an envelope that's yellow and this big, then you have passed, and congratulations. Weeks had passed by, and I was anxious enough to find out if I had passed or failed, because it gave me a new perspective on life. I could show people that I finished my school and I could get a better job. When I went to the mailbox, I finally got the yellow envelope, and I was so excited and elated that I finally got my high school diploma. I felt valued, and I felt important when I got it. My struggles would have been different if I had completed my high school diploma. I would have gone to college 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I would have been standing here with a PhD or a master's degree. However, my life was not as easy as that, and the bills that were available at the time, or the laws that were available at the time for teenagers my age, were not there. But this bill, HB 6569, stands for everything I should have had when I was 16. My daughter now is 17 and attending adult education. The hardest thing for me was to withdraw her from school. However, I need this to make sense to her, because she's working really, really hard. Just the other day, I gave her an exam, and she sat there and she said, Mom, I studied for 5 minutes and I got a 93 on my exam, and you see how hard she's working. And she's going to go and attend adult education, and it's going to be for nothing. It doesn't make any sense. Because then she's going to feel worthless, and she's going to feel like she's never accomplished anything in her life. So please, if you have anything in your life that's worth something, your children are. And I'm going to fight for HB 6569 to pass. Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank you both. I think what you both have demonstrated, first of all, is you've made us all proud, and we're with you. So know that. And, you know, it brings out a couple of more arguments in my mind. And one is that, I've had some legislators actually say that, that everyone, that the kids don't want to be there, and just assume that this is the hard heads, the hard cases. And, that is such a stereotype, and it really needs to be broken down, because I understand that there are going to be those that will just be truant and don't want to be there. But there are so many of kids that we're losing that really just need that mentorship, that guidance, the second chance, the alternative route, because not everyone fits in the same box. Other things are going on in their lives. And that is the inspiration behind the bill. And so I very much appreciate you sharing that. The other thing that comes to my mind, which I initially made me want to be a part of this, was the culture argument. How difficult is it to have a child who in the 7th and 8th grade already doesn't like school and knows at 16 they can quit? To tell you the truth, we ask for problems because we create a culture where the child now begins to advocate, and 7th grade and 8th grade and freshman year, Mom, I want to quit. Yo, teacher, I'm going to quit in a year, so whatever. And this is a cultural argument that we also need to have, because we need to give parents the ability to say, oh no, you're not. You're in school till you're a man or you're a woman legally, period. And to begin to introduce that into our conversations. So you made me think of both those things, and I appreciate that.
Buenos dias. Good morning. My name is Lina Lorenzi, and I would like to say thank you for having me, to members of the legislature, children's advocates, members of the press, and the general public. I would like in particular to thank State Representative Jason Bartlett for inviting the Latino and Puerto Rican Affairs Commission to speak on at this important press conference. We are here to urge the Connecticut General Assembly to raise the age at which students in the state of Connecticut are allowed to drop out of school. The Latino and Puerto Rican Affairs Commission is here to support Bill number 6569, an act concerning reporting of school graduation rates. Most states passed compulsory school age requirements at the beginning of the century, when the country had a very different economy, permitting students to leave school at age 16 to enter the workforce. Over the last 2 decades, many states have raised their compulsory school age from 16 to 18, recognizing that a high school education is the minimum requirement to compete in today's global economy. Research supports the relationship between raising the compulsory school age and reducing the dropout rate. Dropouts are more likely to be unemployed than those who complete high school, and when dropouts do secure work, on average they earn less money than their peers who have completed high school. Current self-sufficiency standards from data released by Lisa Cementilli, Director of Policy and Research for the Permanent Commission on the Status of Women, indicates that for a single adult living in Hartford, the self-sufficiency income must be at least $16,146. A high school graduate can earn a median salary of $583 a week, compared with $937 for someone with a bachelor's degree. In Hartford, according to the Hartford Superintendent of Schools, the graduation rate is about 29%, and only 16 of those receiving diplomas are ready for college. We need to change this. Latinos, according to a Connecticut Voices for Children analysis of dropout data from the Connecticut State Department of Education, tells us that Latino students were almost 4 times more likely to drop out of school than white students. However, schools and communities cannot adequately address the dropout rate without an accurate account of it. There is strong evidence that the actual dropout rates are much higher than the rates reported. For instance, Connecticut school districts have cumulative rates far above the state average, including Bridgeport at 25.9%, New Britain 22.7%, Hartford 20.8%, New Haven 18.7%, and Windham 17.9%. There are several ways in which dropout statistics may not accurately reflect the number of students who leave, such as failure to include summer dropouts or failure to include adult education classes. Organizing a closer look at an individual high school and tracing what actually happens to the student would be one good way to show the dropout rate is often several times what is being reported by the school district and state government. Those levels, if checked, are astonishingly high for Black and Latino males in high poverty areas. While we need to give our students our schools and programs that motivate them to stay in school, we need to close the achievement gap. A McKinsey & Company study released just 8 days ago entitled The Economic Impact of the Achievement Gap in America's Schools points out that the persistence of the economic achievement gap imposes on the United States the economic equivalent of a permanent national recession. For Black and Latino students, failing to close the achievement gap led to an opportunity loss in 2008 of between $400 billion and $525 billion, or 2 to 4% of the national domestic product. The time is right for the legislature to make this change, especially if we take into consideration that Connecticut is receiving $745 million in federal surplus money to be used in the next biennium. As Sandra Abrevaya, Deputy Press Secretary of the United States Department of Education, told the Hartford Courant yesterday, we are encouraging states as much as possible to drive reform with this money. Lower rates of graduation by minority students, and Latinos in particular, are well documented in Connecticut. The Latino and Puerto Rican Affairs Commission fully and unconditionally supports the dropout bill and Representative Bartlett's effort to eliminate pathways and shortcuts to student failure. We believe raising the dropout age and giving schools the incentive to keep students in school is a positive step toward reducing the dropout rate, stemming the loss of minority students and affecting the educational outcomes that will continue to positively impact the state for generations. Thank you.
I do want to state, too, that in addition to the bill that was petitioned out, we have yesterday made major steps forward in terms of bringing this into actual law, and that is the Black and Latino legislators, as well as all of the co-sponsors, which I believe we had 17 co-sponsors of the bill. We're joined by Senator Gaffey and Representative Fleischman, who are the chairs of the Education Committee, and joined to introduce an amendment onto a bill yesterday. So we will have a fiscal note, and we'll be able to work from there in terms of moving this legislation forward. So we're extremely excited and extremely pleased to have the co-chairs of the Education Committee join us in this effort. And so now I'd like to introduce any of the legislators that would like to say a few words, and we'll start with Representative.
Good morning. I would like to thank the two young ladies that joined us today and told us your story. It's important as legislators for us to see the story behind our failures. I once heard someone say that, how can you expect a child at 16 to make a decision that would affect them the rest of their life? Now, studies show that children's minds are still forming at the age of 16, so there's no way that they can make that kind of decision. I teach young people that knowledge is power. I also teach young people that education is the key to success, and that we as a society have to empower our children. Because I know I'm not, I know that eventually I'm not going to be here on this earth, and so I want to leave behind me a legacy that can carry on. And the only way that we can do that as a society is to make sure our children are educated. We have to empower them. We are the leaders. We are the adults. We have to make the decision for our children. I want to thank Representative Bartlett for 6569, because I think it does address the achievement gap issue, in that when children know that they're going to quit school, then that's all they're just waiting their time. You reminded me of a story of a young lady who was very, very bright. She hated school. So she quit when she was 16. Had great jobs, worked for attorneys, corporations, but guess what? When they found out she didn't have a high school diploma, she was out. She is now almost 50 years old and working on her GED. Now tell me, 50 years old and working on her GED, when she could have done it at 16. I want to close with this remark. My mom once said to me, she says, Pat, you can make mistakes in life. She says, and you can still accomplish the things that you want, but do what you have to do now while you're still young. And that's what I say about education and getting your high school diploma. Do it now, while you're still young, before you get married, have the children, because we know how difficult it is to go back. So again, I ask my colleagues to join me in sponsoring this bill. And even if we could just get the fiscal note to see the cost behind it, but it is a start. Thank you.
I would like to have Representative Michelle Cook from Torrington.
Good morning. Ladies, I want to explain to you that you have just become wonderful role models for the youth in Connecticut. You're working on something to improve yourself, and that's what we wish all of our youth to do. I come from a town whose demographics have changed over the years, and I'm working with the Torrington Early Childhood Collaborative, and they've been working on a study for the past several months, and they've discovered that 1 in 5 mothers in my town do not hold a high school diploma. So for me, this is even more passionate. We hear the complaints of cost. We hear that we're not doing the job. And as legislators, our job is to represent not just the adults, but each and every resident of Connecticut. My job as a legislator is to represent each and every person in the town of Torrington. And if I have the ability to make a difference, to help impact those youth, to give them a reason to stay in school, give them a focus and a drive, and to explain to them that, exactly like Representative Miller said, at 16, we don't always realize what those decisions are going to do to our future. Trying to give them a little extra push. It might not be very simple in the beginning, but this is a goal. We need to look to our future, and this is a direction, and we're starting that direction. And I thank you for that, because I think sometimes our focus and our directions get lost, and we do things a little backwards. And if we start with the ones that are going to make our future, and that's our youth of today, then that's where we need to start focusing our efforts. And so I'd like to thank you for your time and your concern and your compassion for these issues, as well as the support for us and supporting us in making these things work. So thank you very much.
Senator Barbara Lambert from Milford.
Thank you, Representative Bartlett. Listening to you and feeling that emotion in you. I was raised with a mom who had, they were 5 in her family. And her father was very ill at a very early age, and he died at 46. When my mom was 16, she did the right thing as the oldest person in the family, and she quit school. And though you could get a job and everything else at that age, and it wasn't required, the pain that I felt that you were expressing, I saw that all my life. My mom was 70 years old when she went back and got her GED. And it was because there was a shame that she felt. And in those days, they would lie and just say they didn't do the checking they did today. But that pain and that shame, she brought with her. And I'd say, Mom, how could you feel shame? You did something that was so remarkable, and I envy you the fact that you had the strength. But it always stayed with her. And in Milford, we made some hard decisions because we have an alternate ed program. And as Representative Bartlett said, all children cannot participate in the same structured education that we have. So what did we do? We had a warehouse, and we housed these children in a warehouse. What did that tell these children, what we felt about that value? Well, I'm proud to say that we had the Milford Academy. We now have the Milford Academy alternate program. This facility is beautiful. And when I went to the opening, I felt so elated because these children now had ownership of a building that we invested in. And I just want to say we cannot invest enough and give our youth the pride. And some of you at 16 made those choices, and I would love to see the bill pass because 18 is at least they can make some informed decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Gary Holder Winfield from New Haven.
Good morning. You know, my mother dropped out of high school, and although she went back eventually and got her diploma, life was difficult for her because of the trajectory on which that decision made for her life. And my mother now doesn't work anymore. She worked herself literally nearly to death to make sure that I wouldn't do the same thing. That is all because of the decision she made. And I talked to my mother one day about it, and I asked her, so why did you drop out of high school? And, you know, for some of us, we don't see a future. And that's the reason she dropped out of high school. It wasn't because she was a bad student. She was actually a pretty good student. But for my mother, she thought that even though she was a good student, in the times that she was in school, it didn't mean that much. And so getting a high school diploma really wasn't going to take her anywhere. She thought maybe I should just go do some work and, you know, kind of join along with what other people were doing. It was the wrong decision. But had somebody said to her, you cannot drop out of school at this point, she probably wouldn't have dropped out of school. And if she, and being a good student, she probably would have done a lot different in life. And I probably wouldn't have to go visit my mother now, who is an invalid, because of the work she had to do. My brother also dropped out of school for similar reasons. You know, as hard as my mother worked, we grew up in my brother and sister and I, we grew up in a community where there weren't a lot of choices. You could choose to struggle, but a lot of people who struggled did not make it. So my brother, similar to my mother, didn't see getting a high school diploma as a way to make it. So my brother went to work, and he's struggling to this day. And so I understand, in a very real sense, what the impact of this is on people. And I understand for another reason. I wake up every morning, and one of the first things I do is I check my email. And I get an email from the city of New Haven talking to me about what's happened with the young people in the city, because that's what the emails talk about when they talk about police reports. It's always the young people. And invariably, you will see that some young person has been shot. And that young person is usually 16 or 17 years old and does not have a high school diploma. The job we're supposed to be doing here, if we're doing our job, is providing security for the people of the state of Connecticut. Education is that security. If we are not doing that, we are not doing our jobs. It is that plain and simple. And so I'm glad to stand here today to support House Bill 6569, because I think it's the right thing to do and because it's our job. Thank you.
That concludes the press conference, unless anyone has any questions. Hearing none, we'll be in session. Thank you.